So if I start off the same way, I'm just going to create a solid, and then fractal noise. I'm going to go ahead and make some of those same basic changes that I had initially. Soft linear, we'll leave. Let's scale this up, increase the contrast. Something like that. And give it some movement. So start there. I thought 12 actually kind of worked last time, so we'll do 12. All right, so we've got some movement going on. So, looking back at this fractal that I had, so it kind of blends off. So I showed you masking, creating a shape and using it as a mask within the layers panel. There's another way to create a mask, and that is, and I do it all the time when I'm not paying attention. I'll have an object selected, I'll go and draw a shape. And if I've got an object selected and I draw a shape on top of it, it'll use that as a mask. It'll actually make it part of the original shape. So I come back over here, I've got my white solid selected. I'm just going to go up here and grab a circle, my ellipse tool, and there's another way to create a mask. So I'm just going to kind of draw this out. And masks within this capacity have a lot of other features to them. So if I open this up, actually I'm going to slide this up. If I open up this, it adds a mask element to my shape. If I open this up, I can, there's a variety of different things. I can feather it, give it some opacity, or expand or contract it, which are the main things I kind of want to look at. So I'm going to look at expansion first. If I go to the negative numbers, it'll actually draw that mask in. If I go to positive numbers, it'll expand it out. Again, it's a fully animatable item. But I'm just going to kind of draw that down. And then I'm going to go up here to this mask feather. And I'm going to drag this up, and that's going to give it some kind of soft edges. So now I'm getting something that has a neat kind of effect that's closer to what I started with, but still not quite there yet. I really don't like how soft that edge is by itself. I think that those grays in the air in the middle kind of get in the way for what I'm looking for. Maybe they work for, you know, whatever you're trying for. There's another, actually I'm going to contract this a little bit more. It's too big. All right. So there's another effect. Roughen edges. And if I apply that, that sort of takes that featheriness away from it. So if I play that, again, it's got a bunch of different settings. So far this fractal is just, it's my original fractal. I've applied a mask to it. And now I'm adding another effect to that white solid, which actually maybe I should. Give that a name. So roughen edges, again, there's a bunch of different options. You just got to kind of work with them. I'm going to, just cut, spiky, photocopy is interesting. That might be something to look at coming back to. It's kind of light right now, but I've probably got that feather, the mask that's affecting that. There are probably settings within my fractal I can adjust to brighten some of those light areas. It's not really what I'm looking for at the moment, but I'll keep that in mind. I'm going to go back here to spiky and set the scale on that. Just sort of raise that up. See how high I can go. So if I start playing that, I'm starting to get that sort of rough edge. There's a bunch of different settings in here. Edge sharpness, draw that up. Yeah. Do that. Bless you. So there's a lot of different settings in there. Roughen edges, that has its own animated properties as well. Maybe I actually set the evolution on the edges to do, 8. So that gives them kind of their own effect as well. Fractal influence. Draw that down. No. Put that back where it was. So I'm getting something a little bit closer. Still got some kind of gray areas that seem washed out, but maybe I go back up here to the fractal and I can increase the scale on that a little bit. I don't know, just sometimes kind of playing around with settings until you find something that seems to work. Contrast, I want to. All right. So I'll kind of stop there with that part. So there were some other, if I go back, take a look at this original one that I had. So there's the fractal that I did. I've tossed the Gaussian blur into it to sort of soften some of these edges, roughen edges. I've got a sort of a toner and an optical glow. The optical glow gives that light spread. So let's take a look at the color on it. Go back over here, and I'm still going to contract there. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and add that blur into it and see what I get. Start Gaussian. And then, and I'm going to, actually the order that you can stack these in different orders too. So not only can you stack different effects, I'm going to place the Gaussian blur on top of that noise. So it affects everything below it. And if I want to see what effect something has, if you click on that effects icon, actually it didn't have as much effect as I'd hoped it would have. Maybe if I drop it down below. There we go. So if I drop it below the fractal noise, it affects that more. Something like that. So CC toner was kind of what I used to sort of start colorizing it. Actually, I'll go into the effects. So under the effects menu under color, there's a bunch of different correction settings. I'm just going to take a look at CC toner. And by default, it starts to give it a bit of a sepia tone effect. But if I start adjusting those, the shadowy areas, midtones, highlights, do that. Let's see, tritone, let's do a tone. Yeah, stick with tritone, what I had. Different settings in there, the amount, so I can blend that with the original a little bit. Let's give that. And then I had that bit of a light spread that I had going on. So again, go back to my effects panel. That was optical glow. It was just a glow effect. If I apply optical glow to that, and I can colorize, again, 1,000,002 settings for a lot of these. Do the set to video. I'm going to set the inner tint at white, but the outer tint, let's see what I get if I do my blue effect there too. Let's do that, and then starts to get a very kind of a blurry, it's not exactly what I want, but if I go back to full, radiate, there we go. And let's draw the amount. Way down. And these fractals take a lot of memory. So they redraw on screen fairly slowly. Let's see. If I scale this up more, maybe I scale it back. So it's really just a lot of playing around with it and seeing what you can get to work. But it can give some pretty cool effects. It can be frustrating as well. But by playing around with it, I mean, you can get some kind of cool effects. Not exactly what I was going for, but it's got kind of a neat quality in and of itself. Drop that to half, just to speed it up a little bit. And all of these effects are simply applied to a shape. I can still animate that shape. So maybe I rotate it. Give kind of a different effect to it. Kind of bring this in somehow. So maybe I need to ease that in kind of so it sort of comes slowly to rest. Easy ease. So different from what I started with, but a neat effect either way, you know? I always find it a little frustrating because usually whenever I start off on stuff like this, I've got something kind of specific in my head. And I find it's better if I have just sort of a general idea and I let working with the tools, working with the settings, kind of dictate where that goes a little bit, because it's all kind of all the fractals are kind of mathematically driven. It's very difficult to, you know, kind of predict. I mean, you might have everything just the way you want it, make a setting to one thing and it totally changes it. But, you know, I've got all these effects stacked on simply a white solid is all I started with. But if I turn these off one at a time down to just my fractal noise, that's what I'm left with. Actually, my fractals, why? Let's see what I had there. Dynamic, soft linear, invert. What's that do? Remember too, you can also bring these things in, sort of, you've got layering, different blending modes, just like you do in Photoshop or Illustrator or any others. Multiply, screen, lighten. So if I import, let's import this. I can change my blending mode, set, maybe I do a screen. Frame. Scale that down. Bring these in with different layering modes. There's a screen, maybe it's overlay. Gives a little different effect. So you can layer, effects in as well to kind of give it that ghostly kind of a feel. But if you've got a ghost kind of a character that you want to sort of, you could apply fractals to something like, or like as a displacement to something like that to get it to kind of move and wave, different kinds of things. I don't like overlay. Screen. So So fractals are kind of something to work with. Maybe it, I know some people have talked about lightning, that kind of thing. I'm positive you could get that kind of an effect. If you really wanted to try. Increase the brightness. So just kind of all sorts of things you can do with that. If you're not sure what something does, crank them way out. Just to kind of see. So try some different things with that. So one other thing I kind of wanted to point out too, aside from that, there are, under effects and presets, there are a bunch of animation presets, which are simply a bunch of After Effects effects that are all stacked upon one another to give a result, like we just did manually. But if I there's backgrounds. That are pre-animated, you can kind of start with. Drop that to half. Just a bunch of different kinds of things. Like I said, they place a solid in your timeline, and if you go up here, these by and large, this one specifically, that's fractal noise as well, a bunch of different settings, a tritone, and a fast blur, and dust and scratch is set on top of it. So a lot of these presets are nice to kind of play around with it as well, because you can kind of deconstruct them, see what kinds of things there are, and see what effect they have. All you got to do to see what effect any given thing has is to click on the FX icon, tritone, just to sort of see what you get. And you can, affect these, modify these from there as well. So take a look through those. Creepy. For backgrounds, different behaviors. So if I have let's try a that. Draw a ball, go back into blinking opacity maybe. Again, just a bunch of presets. So, and all this does is sets effect does it set? Effects for the opacities, the frequency, that kind of thing. A lot of times with some of these two frequencies, you can actually tie audio track into a shape to drive the movement of it. And then there's a bunch of different text effects as well. bunch of presets. I thought they had a bunch of new ones in, but I guess they don't. So different things you can apply, kind of deconstruct if you want to learn what they do. So anyway, fractals are kind of a neat thing. So you got to play around with them, but you can get some pretty interesting effects, just kind of stack stuff. It's kind of hard to know sometimes too what you can actually do when you don't know what all the different effects are. And all I can really tell you with that is, I'm sure you can find a list somewhere, but that doesn't even help you an awful lot, is to mess with them and see what you get. I mean, have an idea in your head, break it down, and just that, the search bar on the effects and presets panel is pretty helpful in terms of discovering what there is, what kinds of things you can use and what you can try. I mean, if I type glow, there's a bunch of different glow options. There's a regular stylized glow, but the optical glow was what I used on mine. So just by working with those is really the best way to get used to them. So I do have, if you want, although I'm not sure where he put it at. I have to look downstairs, I guess. I do have instructions to how you load. You can test your animation on the device if you want. Otherwise, what we're going to do is that you'll turn these in on Monday, and we'll take all of them and we'll load them up so you can see them that way too. So if you want to see it beforehand, I have instructions I can send you, but I got to figure out where he put the spinning optical thing. Otherwise, next week we should be able to see it. All right. So whenever you turn these in, make sure you upload your MP4 file directly to Canvas so we can download it and string them all together. A link on YouTube won't help us a whole lot because I can't download that. So have those early, done before class Monday. It's going to give you the rest of the day to work on it. If you can get it done, you get a nice long weekend, not have to worry about it. I mean, because you don't have classes tomorrow and Friday, do you? So, spend the time in class, get it as far as you can so you don't have to spend a lot of time over your long weekend working on it. But they are due Monday morning. There is no pro forma for this one. The research document was kind of in place of that. So the grading on it will just, be on the piece itself, which you tried to do. You can, before this display goes in at the end of the month, you will have time, if we see it up there on the, on the fan, and there's areas of it you don't like, you got time to fix them. You can go back, modify them, do what you want to with them, all right? So if you have any questions about specific things, spend the time to ask. Otherwise, spend the rest of class time to work. So.